You can bring her up.
820.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle
Reverend
of my
Johnson?
mission was that my kids wouldn't have a father.
Yeah.
And I started
Hi,
thinking,
Santita here. How you doing?
This isn't my story.
I am well. How are you?
It's great
had
hearing
to
your voice.
Become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that
Okay,
my kids
I need
are
you to
empowered
bring
truly believe
Matt, bring the
that
radio
if
down
they
and bring
can think it, they can
Pastor
do it.
Johnson up.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the...
Thank you so much. But if you can just play it softly in the background, that would be great. Okay, Pastor Johnson, how you doing? We're up on Facebook
well.
now.
What about you?
I am doing great.
Great.
So, let me do that.
On this very crisp morning.
Oh my gosh, girl! I mean, it's like going back to when I was a child. You know, I thought about Mabel Walker and how she got me wearing clothes. We were going out to lobby for Bill Cousins, so we could get him elected. Remember that? We stood with him.
Yeah.
And we went back over to their house to get something to eat. And she was, Mabel was always so nervous. This baby doesn't have enough clothes on. Girl, by the time I walked out, I looked like a joke. I don't know if you ever saw A Christmas Story. When this child was walking, couldn't even.
My favorite Christmas movie.
Oh, mine too. And this child could not walk for all the stuff. That is what Mabel did to me. I love you, Mabel. In heaven. I was like, she said, "Baby, you warm?" I'm like,
I can't even feel myself.
I don't even know what. And Uncle Saint, of course, had something to say when I got back to the house.
Yeah, and we can't say what he might have said.
Oh my gosh! No, he said that when I left the room, which I overheard. He was like, "This is just stupid." I was like, "Oh," and Mom said, "Oh, Saint." He said, "Stupid. This child can't even move. Child can't move." Oh, and he started helping me to take my all of the extra clothes off, some of which belonged to Eileen. Oh, I miss those times. What a blessing they were. You know, we knew some really wonderful people. Some wonderful people. Wonderful people. Wonderful people. So, I'm going to call you because one of the things that I've been talking about is I've been trying to let Todd know. I said, because you need to talk to people who've been in push historically. And I'm saying hello to Angela and Andre and Philip. How you doing, sweetheart, out there in Pennsylvania? And Shirley in beautiful Pennsylvania, but Philly. And Shirley, everybody, please go over to the Santita Jackson YouTube channel, if you will. I was telling him, we have a corporate model now, which we need to. I said, we need to rework that because this has always been a church-based organization, and it was built by church people, and it felt like that. I said, we need that's what will be the saving grace of our people and the organization itself. You have a COO, and I said that's the wrong model. We're church people.
Right.
We're church people. And I told my father that. I said, I hear you. We're church people. I don't know about anything else, all this other stuff. We are church people. And I'm going to stay right there on that.
Amen.
Reverend Evans, Aunt Lucille, the who structured the organization, we're still functioning on her structure, is Lucille Conway Loman.
That's right.
Who built Fellowship, Push, Breadbasket, got Reverend Hardy, his church. There's been no one more influential in the Black church than Lucille Conway Loman, and we need to lift up her name in any way that we can. I mean, because you see people like her, and you think that if we were not sexist, where would she have gone? But God used her the way God needed to use her. But you see that with Aunt Udella, Udella Evans Reed, who has the fire of a preacher, of an evangelist. So, but we, make the progress when we make it. So there you have it. Everybody, we're going to be talking about affirmative action today with CK, legal Q&A with CK with a tremendous panel. Did you know that affirmative action has helped white women more than any other group? Yes. Even though the fiercest opponents of affirmative action are white women, interestingly enough. So we're going to talk about that, but we're going to talk about what affirmative action has brought us and if it is eliminated, and it could be gutted. It could be gutted. What will it cost us? Then we're going to talk about these mandates, and there's a lot of pushback on people and boosters. People don't
30
feel comfortable
seconds.
getting them, or they're being denied them, which is interesting, right? So it's, because the CDC rules are not clear. Oh, Pastor Johnson, it's like, come on, y'all. Would you figure this out, please? Because this is like,
10 seconds.
ugh, unbelievable. So here we go.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Join you on the Santita Jackson Show, coming to you from WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's Wednesday, January 26, 2022. Can you believe we're almost through the month and it is freezing here in Chicago, 12 degrees above zero, but it's not that yet. That will be the high. It's about 1 degree. My board operator, Matt, bless your heart, he got out in the cold and it was 1 degree above zero. Ooh. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 25 degrees, mostly sunny, everybody. Please, please, please check on your loved ones, check on your neighbors to make sure that they're getting enough heat. And if they don't get enough heat, get them to warming stations. That is what needs to happen. Hey, everybody, we're going to be talking about affirmative action today. Did you know that white women are the greatest beneficiaries of affirmative action? Did you know that 70% of the Asian community supports affirmative, even though they're being used in these cases? Did you know that there's a very interesting tactic being used by the plaintiffs in these cases? They've chosen two of the nation's preeminent universities, one public, one private, and they structured their lawsuit so that they would be argued at the same time, so that to prompt the Supreme Court to make a sweeping mandate on all colleges. So we got to talk about affirmative action because the workplace would not look the same without it. It would not look the same without it. All you have to do is look at these movies from 50, 60 years ago, from the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and see just how tremendously women's lots have improved. The expectations, all the things that we're able to do. I mean, that's something that we need to look at that. I mean, we're not relegated to the same roles that we've been relegated to over the decades. And that is due in part to the civil rights movement, affirmative action, the women's rights movement. All of these movements work together. So we got a tremendous panel as we talk with C.K. Hoffler about that today. And of course, we're going to get the latest and the greatest on COVID-19. Have you gotten your booster shots? What are the protocols that you need to be following anyway? Okay, anyway, because that's one of the things that concerns me, because we're seeing COVID infection rates continue to rise. Well, so in some places, not in all places, though. That's interesting. Okay, everybody, I want you to call me or text me at 773-763-9278 and just tell me what your thoughts are about affirmative action. Tell me about your thoughts of the big stories of the day. Something is always percolating overnight. What about Ukraine? We had a good conversation about that today, and we're going to continue to carry that conversation forward because it does not seem that the drumbeats of war have been muted. God bless us all. Everybody, let's get to some of these headlines. The Dow closed down 66 points. The NASDAQ closed down 315 points, and the S&P 500 closed down 53 points. But that belies all of the wild activity on Wall Street yesterday. There was a 1,000-point swing yet again. yet again. And we're seeing what they said was a course correction, but we will see. We will see. Are you invested in the stock market? Most Americans are not. But I'd like to know, what do you think is happening with your 401k? Oh my gosh, in the NBA, the Timberwolves won. It was a nail biter over the Trailblazers, 109 to 107. And the Bulls will be playing the Raptors tonight in the NHL. Chicago will be playing the Red Wings. Hey, hey, hey. President Biden says of a Russian invasion of the Ukraine is imminent. But the atmosphere among the two countries' populations is wildly different. Images from state TV in Russia depict NATO forces as the aggressors, with tanks and troops heading to the Ukrainian border and snipers taking aim. NATO, meanwhile, says there is a diplomatic way out of the crisis. But Russia must show it's ready to engage in good faith in political talks. And as we heard from Professor David Gibbs from Arizona, we have to make good our promise not to bring NATO into that part of Europe. That is not what we have done. So understandably, they do feel threatened. Something to think about, everybody, as we're hearing the drumbeats of war. Coronavirus. Pfizer and BioNTech have begun a clinical trial for the Omicron-specific COVID-19 vaccine. The study will evaluate the new vaccine for safety, tolerability, and the level of immune response in up to 1,420 healthy adults aged 18 to 55. That is coming from CNN. Federal prosecutors are reviewing fake electoral college certifications that falsely declared former President Donald Trump won several states in the 2020 election that he actually lost. What do you think about that, everybody? Call me, text me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. In the meantime, Alabama Republicans illegally discriminated against black voters when they drew the state's 7 new congressional districts last year and must quickly withdraw the plan, according to this news report. The ruling is very consequential, a blunt assessment of the way lawmakers are using their power, not just in Alabama, but all over the country. Good on Alabama. And there was a patient removed from a heart transplant list for refusing the COVID-19 vaccine. A Boston area hospital said it will not perform a heart transplant on a patient, a father of 2 who's expecting his 3rd child, who refuses to get a COVID-19 vaccine. DJ Ferguson was previously prioritized for a heart transplant at Brigham and Women's Hospital. That's the Harvard hospital, one of them. But he is no longer eligible as he refuses to get the vaccine, said his family. They are fighting for him to be able to get that vaccine. Pastor Vicki Johnson, wow, what times we are in. I mean, what do you think about that? I just think, if doctors are full of harm. Ah, you deny someone. I mean, are we going to now, if you're overweight, are you going to be denied treatment for a heart attack? I mean, really? It just, if you're a smoker, you're not going to get treatment for lung cancer. It's okay. The warnings are on the packages, but the packages are also, we found that they put chemicals in cigarettes that make them more addictive than heroin. I mean,
Yes, yes.
I don't know. I mean, I don't, I'm glad I'm not God. And I'm glad I don't play God either. Ooh, Pastor Vicki Johnson, St. Thomas Lutheran Church here in Chicago on 80th and Jeffrey, but you have gone back to virtual worship, have you not?
Yes, we have. We're watching the numbers, waiting for them to come down so that we can gather again safely inside the building.
All right.
But until then,
all right.
Live.
I'm glad to know that. Well, what is the good news today?
Well, good morning, Santita,
Yes.
and good morning to all of your morning stars and friends. There is good news. There is a popular story in Mark, the 4th chapter, of Jesus taking his disciples on a boat, and there arose a storm. What do you think Jesus did during the storm? He slept. Now, I know that we are familiar with storms, the storms of our students and teachers with in-person learning. We know about storms of sickness, whether it is us or someone we love. We know about storms of change of careers, residents, and in relationships, we know about storms. Storms can be disruptive. Storms can be scary. Storms can be life-changing. It's all in how we react to and act during a storm. What did Jesus do while in a storm? Well, he tried to sleep through it. He was calm. He knew everything was going to be all right. When he was called to do something, he used the power of his own word to speak for what he wanted. He wanted the winds and the waves to dissipate. So he spoke to them and told them to be still. In the storm, there was confusion. So he spoke for peace. What do you want? Does what you want match what you are saying? What you say can get you into a storm, can get you through a storm, or by the grace of God can get you out of a storm. Speak for what you want. If you ever find yourself in a storm, watch what you are saying. Instead of scampering around like the disciples, worried and confused, use your words just like Jesus did to make the storm cease. Speak words of encouragement, not oppression. Speak words of faith, not fear. Speak words of power, not worry. All I know is if you want the winds and the waves of the storm in your life to cease, pay attention to what you are saying. Speak to the storm and say, peace, be still. If you can do this, and I believe that you can, then to me, that's good news.
Very quickly before you go, because that is good news. We really do have to watch what we say and what we think. How do we mind our thoughts? Because it seems like we speak a lot of negativity into existence.
You know, we're like programmed for negativity. We've seen it all around us, and we hear it every day on the news. We have to pay attention to our thoughts instead of allowing them to just run rampant. Pay attention to them and then arrest them. Arrest the ones that have no business in your mind. And the ones that are propelling you to where you want to go, nurture them. Speak more of them. Think more of them. But it's a matter of just being cognizant of what we are saying, thinking, and doing.
Amen to that. Pastor Vicki Johnson, St. Thomas Lutheran Church here in Chicago. How can we worship with you virtually on Sunday, and at what time would we join you?
You can join us at 11:45 a.m. from 11:45 a.m. to 12:15 p.m. on Facebook Live at St. Thomas Lutheran Church, Chicago.
Amen to that. Because we're just trying to stay safe, everybody. We're trying to stay safe, and of course we have got Doctors Deborah Holden and Dr. Shanina Knighton, Dr. Deborah Holden, epidemiologist, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University School of Medicine. And of course, we have got Dr. Shanina Knighton, registered nurse from Case Western Reserve University, infection preventionist. Just very quickly, everything's really uneven, Dr. Verholden. You see that Pastor Johnson, as we've watched this Omicron surge, she and they have made the decision to go virtual. Do you think that in church worship, now everybody's not doing that now. Of course, last year, that's what we were doing. What do you think is the safest way to go for people? If people are immunocompromised, should they worship virtually? Is that the safer thing to do right now with the Omicron surge? I mean, And just with given the fact that we're still in a pandemic, Dr. Fauci said we're still in phase 1.
Yeah, well, so if I were personally immunocompromised, I wouldn't risk contracting this virus. It's just not worth it. So yes, I would absolutely be worshiping virtually. I'll be doing as many things as I can virtually. It's a really interesting phenomenon. I actually flew with baby India. So
Did
I've
you?
been in Baltimore. I did by myself, actually. So she came back to Flint with grandma. So I'm on full-blown just grandma duty. And you know what's interesting? I literally can count on 2 hands how many times she has been outside of the house. Okay? I mean, like out in public, right? We were, prior to the snow coming here, we would take her out, put her in her stroller, and just take her out, just so she could get some sunlight on her and like that. But now in Michigan, everything's snow covered. It's too much, snow out for that. But so we went to the airport, and she was so happy the entire time. And when I tell you, being with her in Baltimore, this is like this baby, you pick her up and she just laughs and she just smiles and she just shifts my whole mood. So I thought, oh, how is she going to do when we're out, right? Because she has not been out that much. And most of her outings have been, we visited 2 different households, mostly older adults, because that's really their only option to ever get to see her, is we're going to have to bring her to them. She's been to her well baby visit, and she has one today. She was at the airport. She was so happy. Every time she saw people, she smiled, she laughed, all of that. And something really interesting, when we got home, she didn't say, boy, I'm over COVID. I need me more of that airport time. I just want to. No, she went with the flow. And she has spent, can you imagine, her almost entire life in the house. I thought these babies that are born during COVID, they aren't getting socialized the same way. They aren't getting, mind you, I'm not saying it's bad. It's also different. Because at the same time, she also gets a lot of attention. I think about this 32 million word gap that they talk about. The poor kids hear 32 million words fewer than wealthier kids. I thought not these COVID kids, because they're at home listening to Zooms and all of this kind of stuff. It's our adult brains and minds who just but it's almost childlike. Like we want what we want when we want it, how we want it, independent of what's happening out there. So it's funny because a lot of the people that I know who are just out here, people who've had COVID, know they have COVID and still go out. I told you when I flew down, I'm pretty sure I flew next to a man who had COVID. He was trying to protect me, I think, and others from getting it, but pretty sure this guy had COVID. He coughed the entire ride and insisted on sitting in a row by himself. He even left first class so he could sit on a row by himself. So there's just a lot of people who are just determined, no matter what, I'm going to do me, and I'm going to just carry on with business as usual. And I just think it's foolish. Like, really, it's foolish. And I think back to the people who came through that pandemic of 1918. They didn't even have all of the comforts that we have. They didn't have the ability to space time with loved ones, so that they could see their faces. They didn't have the opportunity to get news, to travel as fast as we do. News here now travels in like seconds. What is there, a 6-second delay on radio? I mean, I don't even think it's that with social media. You know what I mean? It's like instant. So I just remind people we are still very much in a pandemic, and people should just act like that. And that means we're going to have to adjust with the flow and the rhythm of the pandemic. When we're in a surge, people will have to mask up. People will have to practice physical distancing. People will have to, be more mindful. Pastors will have to make decisions about whether or not they're going to have worship services in person, or remotely. But isn't that how life should be? Shouldn't we go with and govern ourselves accordingly based on what's happening? It's like if it's raining outside and it's raining, you take an umbrella with you.
But you know what?
Don't say, "Oh, forget it, I'm over rain," and just leave. You grab your umbrella.
You're right, but you know what?
These times, grab your mask.
But you know what you are giving as you talk about baby India and how you've been able to move around. And that's why I encourage on a cold day like today, reach out and touch someone. That's not just a catchphrase. What baby India and you and your family have is love, and you have each other.
Yes.
You're not living in isolation, and more than that, you know that you have people who love you and people who care. So many of us do not have that. So many of us are living in homes that are where the love has just been disrupted. I'm not going to say it's not there. I'm going to say it's disrupted. And look, everybody has arguments. Everybody does arguments don't have to become fights, though they don't. But we all have stuff that we're working through. We all do. I'm the first one to tell you that. I'm such an imperfect human being, and I just thank God for God's grace. That having been said, that's why I think one of the takeaways from this, Dr. Verhoeven, has to be the love. We have a deficit of that too. I mean, I was just reading this story, and I'd just like to get your comments these couple of minutes before we go to break. This 31-year-old man, for reasons of his own, he has not been vaccinated. He was at the top of the list to get a transplant. He's got 2 children, a wife, and his wife is having the 3rd baby, 31 years of age. And his family were shocked that he was removed from the heart transplant list. And they said, they made these determinations because, if he's not vaccinated, he is at heightened, he is more vulnerable to COVID-19. I said, but how do you remove someone from a heart transplant list when they were at the top? You just took him off. It's like punishment. And it just doesn't seem ethical to me. Now, you're in the medical field. Help me with that. I got 2 minutes.
Well, I mean, we've got the organ transplant list and the whole process is a sticky one, right? We all know, and I won't even name names, but we got celebrities who've gotten 3-4 livers and drank them all up. Up. And that's not supposed to be allowed to happen. If you have alcoholism and you don't get that alcoholism treated and resolved, you are supposedly not eligible for a kidney transplant or liver transplant. Why? Because, all of this is a numbers game. We're trying to make sure that the people who need it the most get it, and that the people who have the best chances of survival are doing everything that they have for it to maximize their best chances for survival. Why? Because you don't want these precious organs going to waste. So if the doctor says you got to do this blood work and this and that, et cetera, in order to get the transplant, and you want that transplant, you're going to get that stuff done. And if they say you have to get this vaccine in order to, get this transplant, well, then, that's why I keep telling people, do all your reckoning and soul searching now, because, the day is coming where you might not have the experience of choice. You will be able to choose, but you will have to make the choice between your job or no job, right? Or you'll have to make the choice between being able to, come to the family, dinner versus not being able to come. So it is a tough situation, but there are criteria for all of these things. And the fact that the COVID vaccine is getting added to it does not surprise me at all.
It just feels like it's being used as a cudgel. I think that's what's unsettling to me. Because we're going to talk about more of that when we get on the other side, because now we're seeing that the Biden administration has withdrawn COVID vaccine mandates for businesses because they've lost the Supreme Court cases. So there's a lot going on here. A lot going on. Talking about affirmative action too, everybody. Did you know that white women are the greatest beneficiaries of affirmative action? Did you know that 70% of Asian Americans support affirmative action? even though they're being used as the face of anti-affirmative action. There's a lot to talk about on the Santita Jackson Show today. Go over to YouTube, the Santita Jackson Show, and call me or text me at 773-763-9278. Back with more in just a few minutes. Okay, you all can talk. Okay. You all can speak with each other.
This affirmative action issue I deal with, I don't teach anymore, but I used to take this on in one of my classes, Cultural Factors in Public Health. And you could see people's face drop when I show them that for affirmative action and who really were the primary beneficiaries. And then the conversations that we would have as we would unpack why is that? And then we looked at, everything from the GI Bill to, and people think of the GI Bill, they only think about college, but there's a whole lot of stuff that was in the GI Bill. And then we just find out if you're white, you're just more likely to be successful in these formal systems and structures than if you are any other race or ethnicity. It's some interesting stuff. I actually consider all that public health. There's this big movement now in public health to deal with what people call the social determinants of health. And my good buddy Daniel Dawes calls them the social and political determinants of health. And he's got this really great book called The Social and Political Determinants of Health. He also authored the book called 150 Years of Obamacare. But I'm like, well, if we know that, your zip code is a stronger determinant of how long you can expect to live and the quality of life that you can expect to live, even above and beyond your genetic code, then we have to see that, place matters, that these social and political determinants are these primary drivers of health and health outcomes. How can we do public health without addressing those?
Absolutely. Hold on one second. Let me hear Dr. Knighton. Dr. Knighton, I just want to do a mic test with you.
I'm here.
Okay, just want to make sure that you sound right. And Dr. Verholden, that's what we're gonna be talking about with C.K. Hoffler at the top of the hour. If you want to stay and talk about that, you're more than welcome to.
I'd love to hear what she has to say from that.
Okay.
From her perspective.
Yeah. So okay.
But to me, these are all public health issues. Not that they don't cross over into other domains, because they do. But it's like the problem I think we make is we have problems, but the solutions that we implement don't match the level of the problem. Most of the public health solutions that we have, public health used to be fluoride and drinking water. Public health was mass immunization. It was really about protecting the whole population and moving the needle on population health. But so much of what we do now are these individual or small group-based interventions, and they don't deal with the systems and the structures that create the context in which people live and experience health and health behaviors and health choices.
1 minute.
So it's like we've gone backwards. We've gone backwards in public health a bit, in my opinion.
Which is why I question ethics, about who we deny treatment to. Because that to me, just as someone who's religious, you don't do that. Because you're going to deny the overweight person treatment for a heart attack, the smoker for lung cancer. I mean, what? What if they needed a lung transplant? I mean, it's a slippery slope.
30 seconds.
And
it is, but it's not new. It's not new.
Oh no, I know it's not new.
Had to have a double hip replacement, and she was a drug user, and she relapsed. And after waiting and doing all the work and getting, this was like a couple years process.
I got 20 seconds.
Yeah, she made a mistake and smoked crack one night, and went in 2 days later for her hip replacement, failed the drug test, and they took her. She didn't get the hip replacement.
And shame on them.
She wasn't taking it from nobody. These are
shame on them. Let's help people.
We can change the world. We can change the world. Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
More and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world. I am
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. We're going to be talking about affirmative action. Affirmative action. Do you know who really benefits the most from affirmative action? Everyone thinks it's just a black thing. Black kids getting into college, black people getting a job, Hispanic people getting into college, Hispanic people getting a job. Oh, there is so much more to it than that. As a matter of fact, the biggest beneficiaries are white women. Yes, of affirmative action. That's right. Think about it. I mean, 70% of Asian Americans favor affirmative action, is strongly supportive of it, and they support reparations for African Americans too. But they're being made to be the face of the anti-affirmative action movement because it really is a white-led right-wing movement. So we want to talk about that today and what our lives would look like, what our world would look like, what our country would look like without affirmative action. Race-based, that uses race as a basis for moving people into American life. So we're talking with Dr. Deborah Verholden, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University's School of Medicine. Of course, she comes out of Johns Hopkins. And of course, we've got Dr. Shanita Knight, an infection preventionist. Of course, Dr. Verholden brought her to us because she said the piece that is missing, big piece that's missing in this discussion in this pandemic is infection prevention. Infection prevention. We've been having a conversation offline about this young man who's 31 years of age who's been denied a heart transplant because he was at the top of the list before, but because he has been steadfast in his refusal to get a vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine, that one, not any other, that one, he has been removed from the list, and I just. It gives me a bad feeling. It really, 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 really does. But you know what? That is something that we're going to continue to debate. I mean, all of these ethical issues are now on the table. Let's talk about the Biden administration, which these COVID vaccine mandates for private businesses. Well, it turns out that OSHA said that it is pulling the vaccine and testing rules for businesses effective today. Today, the Supreme Court's majority blocked the rules earlier this month. So, President Biden has called on businesses to voluntarily implement the requirements, but more and more businesses are not. So, before I get into what that does to the workplace and what it looks like, Dr. Verholden, what are your comments on that? Dr. Verholden? Ooh. She might be on mute.
There you go, being brilliant on mute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. To OSHA, to the Supreme Court blocking the
vaccine mandate for private businesses.
Mm-hmm. I when it happened, I thought, this is the beginning of, potentially there will be no mandates for this vaccine for many, many years to come. I feel like it's a little bit of a foreshadowing because, we've got this whole now big debate happening in the world around sending kids back to school. And I believe in my county, you're the only ones that haven't gone back yet, of Flint community schools, but the other 25, 26 municipalities in my county and smaller school districts have gone back. I actually think Flint and might be the last two, or two of the last to go back in the state of Michigan. And the state is putting big time pressure on us locally to say what will it take for you guys to get kids back in school. The same rates that you say are the reason they're not back are, all the other schools around you are back like this. So I think it's bigger than just what it means for, OSHA and workplaces and all of that. Mm-hmm. Their first attempt at, this wide sweeping policy stick, because this is the stick, right? Remember, we already tried the carrot and that didn't work. So now we've moved on to the stick. It didn't work. And so I think what that is doing is setting the stage, is setting the tone and the tenor for future mandates that were likely coming, like school children, right? In my mind, I'm like, it's just a matter of time. They are absolutely going to be adding this to required vaccine schedule for children to enter school, right? And there have always been parents who had exceptions and whatever and gotten around that. But the majority of people just went along with it. You just went along with it and you got your kids vaccinated and you got everything that you needed for them to be at school, because if you didn't, it was a big deal. And a lot of schools would not let your kids into school if you were. I say you can forget about that now. All of that stuff is now, I think, a ways off.
But
So I'm not surprised.
those vaccines were not under emergency use authorization. Everything happened so fast, Dr. Dab. I mean, before we get to Dr. Knighton, everything happened so fast. Pfizer was really pushing to hide the results of their testing for 75 years. Who does that? I mean that's in real time. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm like, why would you do that? Transparency.
Yeah. And then when this is the tone, taking action and steps like that, it's like, how do you think that's going to boost people's confidence in the vaccine? You want them to wait their entire lifetime. You want to erase any memory of the early phases of this, from existence.
You don't want to
Right? 'Cause
release
the
your
only people who
documents for 75 years. Are you kidding me? Really?
Yeah.
No, 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 no. Wait, and
Yeah.
I paid you. Not only did I pay you to develop and produce these vaccines, you used government workers, scientists, to develop it. Are you crazy?
Yeah.
No, 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 no. And people are thinking,
And they
I'm
fully
not
own their
alone.
own patents too.
Girl,
They
come on.
fully own their patents. It's like the government was their lead investor, and we don't have no dog in the fight anymore. We don't have the. If I give somebody all this money to develop this, life-saving product that they're gonna make billions of dollars on, you think I'm gonna do that with no financial interest in it? I'm like, since when? Mind you, but I'm asking that question sort of facetiously because we know the government has done this before. They practically, and Dr. Corbett, Mikia Corbett, it really was the leader on the technology that produced the mRNA vaccine for Moderna. So I don't understand how my tax dollars, I feel like I should have a little piece of stock in Pfizer or own a little bit of that patent because my tax dollars paid for it.
You should. I mean, in the meantime,
That's just not how that works.
Cuba has produced a highly effective vaccine, and they're sending it all over the world. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're calling it a historic turning point. They've issued a plan for vaccine internationalism. And it was at a press conference yesterday convened by Progressive International, individuals from Cuba's medical community. And by the way, Cuba produces some of the finest doctors in the world, everybody. They explained their plan to deliver 200 million COVID-19 vaccine doses to low-income nations in the global south. I mean, this, you cannot engender trust when you do this, when it's just money driven. It's just, you can't do that. But you know what? I've had our girl holding on for a minute, and Dr. Deb, you and I can talk for a minute, and we're going to do that because these are conversations that people are having. I just spoke with a friend of mine. We share a godmother. We're god brother and sister. Just before I came on the air today, and he is not only double masking Dr. Deb, Dr. Knighton. He is also putting a coffee filter in his mask. This is no time for you to be on mute. Help me. Hello?
Well, I don't think that I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
Trust me, I just been enjoying listening to y'all this morning, and look, it's been times where Dr. Deb been listening to me talk and ramble, so I just honestly been enjoying. I was going to say, honestly, that was something that was taking place at the beginning of the pandemic when, masks were flying off shelves, and it was shown to work in terms of being able to filter out some of the germs. Now, has it been tested amongst other mechanisms? No, but it does assist with being able to filter out germs, similarly to what a 2.5 particulate matter mask would do, which is typical of one of the surgical masks that would be used. And I'm trying to break it down as best as I can. So I'm telling people, like, honestly, I agree with what Dr. Deb said in terms of, yes, Santita, doing like the overkill, like how she mentioned with 5 masks is probably not what's necessary, but also just taking measures to say, hey, well, maybe I'm going to do extra, for certain reasons. I mean, just as I mentioned before, there aren't certain people that are able to maintain, or I would say, tolerate the N95 mask for multiple reasons. And so if that is the case, then the thing is to think about what alternatives there are. I think the biggest thing is making sure that the materials are breathable and that you're not putting yourself in a suffocating position. And so that's the most important thing.
Well, before I get back to you, Dr. Knighton, Dr. Deb, does India need to be masked when she's out in public, when you had her on the plane? How did you do that?
So this is where this issue of, and we are not, I do not believe we are in this together. I would love to be able to say that. I do believe that would be transformative if Americans adopted the mentality and had the matching behavior to coincide with we are in this together. Masks, the benefit of them is maximized when you get this multiplier effect. When I have on a mask and you have on a mask and everybody has on a mask. And I thought of it, I looked down at her little cute self and we got on the tram at the Detroit airport. When we landed, India was not masked. I was masked the entire time. And everybody that was around us was masked, but she was not masked. They don't even make N95s or KN95s for babies. And so basically, I just kept her close to me the whole time. And there was only one instance where we landed that a woman was standing right next to me. Because people do that, right? The plane lands and I'm in Comfort Plus. They walk all the way up, like they want to get off the plane first. But the problem is you could do that in the past. It was always annoying. But now it's unsafe. I don't want you hovering over me breathing. Oh. So now what I do is I put my bag in the aisle next. As soon as the plane hits the ground, my carry-on bag that I have under the seat goes in the aisle, so nobody will be standing next to me.
I did the same thing.
And like kind of scoop my bag with her foot. I said, see? I said, ma'am, I need you to take 2 steps back, please. I need you to take 2 steps back, please. She didn't even see that I had the baby at first. And I looked back, and she was an older woman. Race is unimportant. I won't say that because I don't want people to get seduced by that argument. But she took 2 steps back, and then I was trying to put my coat on while holding India and some other things. And right behind me, I felt somebody holding my coat sleeve up. And as I slide my arm into my coat, I looked back, and it's the lady.
Bless her heart. Bless her heart.
It's the lady, and I can see, you can see when people are smiling underneath the mask. I could see her little eyes brighten up, and she said, I didn't realize you had a baby. I'm sorry. I was late. My flight was, I only had 25 minutes. I was really just trying to get to my flight. I said, no problem. As soon as they let people go, I'll move my bag and you can go. I just can't have people hovering over me, breathing over my granddaughter. She said, I completely understand. And I just thought, man, that could have gone any number of ways, but yeah, the reality of it is masks for babies is not really, I mean, they can wear them. India snatches my glasses off my face. We actually did try with a little kid mask and then tied a little bit around the ears. It took her about 5 seconds. I mean, she's at that point now where she will pull herself up and climb right off the couch, right? She doesn't have any of that fear. She's not, she snatches my glasses off my face and thinks it's the funniest thing on the planet. So putting a mask on her is probably useless. I would spend more time touching her face trying to wrangle the mask back on than it would provide benefit, So that's why I do need the people around me, and literally I wouldn't take her anywhere where people weren't required to mask. So like here, people aren't required to mask anymore in Michigan indoors. So people go to restaurants and people just don't mask anymore here. I do, but the majority of people don't. People
a lot
who
of
were
people are not.
Before don't.
They're not. They're not. I mean, I see people walking around in my neighborhood. They're not doing it. They're not. Which brings us to you, Dr. Knighton. I mean, because now with these mandates that have been well, that have been ended. What concerns me more, quite frankly, more than the vaccine mandate, would be the masking, because we already know that these vaccines, they don't prevent infection, they don't prevent transmission, but they do mitigate the severity of your illness. I have a friend who's in the hospital right now, waiting on a bed in the ICU, and God bless him, because it's two of them. It's two of them waiting on beds in the ICU. And they have COVID, and they're having a hard time, and they're vaccinated, they're boosted. So there's that. I mean, what should our workplaces look like then? I mean, what precautions should we be taking, um, since more and more people are unmasked, and and they're not protecting, because to me that's the real thing, to protect somebody from COVID. To me, that's the mask is a thing. Maybe I'm wrong, Dr. Knighton.
So I was going to say, I want us to kind of think about life before mask. So I just want to be cautious in saying that I still do stand behind the fact that masks are not a long-term decision. And that when we talk about living with COVID, when we talk about COVID being endemic, is what do those practices look like, right? And so, for example, being in certain workplace settings, and I'm not talking about now because I understand we still have the Omicron variant, which is running rampant. We are also still, of course, in the Midwest in winter months. And so when you think about factors that go into that, this is typically about the time of which people would be sick. So when we're thinking about workplace policies, it honestly comes down to each individual work setting. So how are you spaced at work? Do you have your own working space? In commonly shared areas, what do those areas look like? Are there cleaning measures in place? I'm bringing these things up because I still know that once, let's say, everything is declared over, once things go back to people not being able to, I was going to say, once it goes back to, let's say, like mask mandates or recommendations and requirements not being prevalent because we realize that COVID is endemic, then at that point you ask yourself, what other practices am I doing that can keep me safe? Meaning, am I still closing myself off in, small break rooms at work where everyone is talking in unmasked, but it's during cold season? Am I speaking up when my coworkers' nose is running and they've been coughing, the whole time? Like, am I actually making a recommendation or a complaint that they need to go home so they don't get everybody else sick? So I think that there is a lot more that goes into this, but I do stand behind the fact that no, we are not going to normalize like masks being in the workplace 24/7, because that's not really realistic. And I remind people that this is not going to be the only bug that is going to happen. Whether it is a, transmissible diarrhea or transmissible, vomiting and diarrhea, talking about a virus, because, bugs go around and we call it the bug. We say people call it the bug. And so these things are still going to come around. The question comes is, what safety mechanisms do we have in place when we are in that emergent state? And right now, as we are starting to ease our way out of things, and I'm saying ease our way out because as you see, things are being relaxed, the individual measures that you can take are going to be to protect you. If you know that you are immunocompromised and you're working around individuals that are not going to, let's say, clean their workspaces, or they're not going to practice cough etiquette, or they're not going to have the courtesy to not come to work while they're sick, then that is your decision, to make sure that you still continue to mask up, making sure that you are taking care of your eating habits, making sure that you are following up and making sure that you have the necessary vaccines and the necessary treatments, that you're sticking with, your medication schedule as necessary. So all of these things come into play when you are returning to the work environment. The other piece that many don't talk about, and I know that this is going to come up, and it kind of actually segues into the affirmative action conversation that you're going to have, is workplace discrimination. So there is going to be issues where you're going to see like these mandates start to relax, but because people want to keep up practicing, let's say, wearing their mask, or they want to take their mask off when the workplace wants them to wear it. You're going to see a lot of issues around just these topics alone because we have been in this for 2 years now, and people have normalized having that mask as a protective measure. It's almost like the vets that I take care of. They will tell you that when they leave the military, the one thing that they feel naked without is their gun, because when they are out there on the battlefield, that is the one thing that protects them. That is how we have embraced these masks. Back in the day when we used to wear watches on our arms, you would look down and your arm would feel naked if you didn't have your watch. That's how it is right now, regardless of whether people are in imminent danger or not. And so it comes down to us coming up with guidelines that are going to decipher that for individuals to understand what those risk factors look like in their work setting.
I've got a couple of minutes. For people going to work today, what should they be looking out for?
Well, for one, the problem is a lot of people's jobs do not have surveillance, unfortunately, meaning like the manager might know who has COVID and who doesn't, but that information may not necessarily be matriculated down to individuals. So what I suggest to people is, especially now, make sure that you do have your mask as a protective measure. Make sure that you're cleaning your hands before taking it on and off. Understand that certain things such as commonly shared telephones, commonly shared door handles, commonly shared office spaces, these are areas, that could potentially carry droplets, not just of COVID, cold droplets, flu droplets. And so you want to make sure that you're cleaning your hands, make sure that you're conscious of everything that you're touching, and make sure that if you do have access to environmental cleaning supplies, such as disinfectant wipes, to be able to wipe down surfaces, making sure that you are wiping down surfaces before you occupy that space. For individuals that are working at home that use, let's say, the coffee shop, as their working space, someone probably occupied it before you, so I would still suggest to them to make sure that they're wiping down surfaces before they sit. And also remember, if you have to grab the back of the chair to sit down, somebody else had to grab it too. So making sure that you're cleaning your hands before you're touching your pastries and different things like that. So it's just really being conscious about what we're touching and what we're putting in our mouth.
Disinfectant wipes? Faces. Or, what do you use to wipe things down?
If that's what you have access to, then that's fine. If you have alcohol, then that's fine to wipe things down. If you do use, let's say, a disinfectant product, the most important thing is making sure that it fits for the appropriate amount of contact time, and also paying attention to how it treats your skin. Because a lot of times we'll wipe stuff down and not think about the chemicals that are going on our skin.
Whew, Dr. Deb. This is a lot, but people are getting back out here. That's why it's important for us to know what we need to do. Because every time you and Dr. Knighton bring some information to us, it's like we're hearing it for the first time. And, it's just, when we talk about the importance of the vote and how we need to protect our vote, people don't really think about that until they get to the polling place and they find out their names have been purged, right? Or they offer you a provisional ballot. Many of which, I wouldn't do a provisional ballot. I would wait until a voting machine is available. That having been said, we just need to be you need to be aware, you need to be vigilant. Go to Hey Dr. Nina, at HEYDRNINA. Hey Dr. Nina, at Hey Dr. Nina. You don't want to miss that. She's got so much great stuff on Instagram and prevention. What is your website, Dr. Knighton? Prevention Saves Lives?
Yes,
PreventionSavesLives.com. PreventionSavesLives.com. You can follow Dr. Deb, our Dr. Deb. Thank goodness she came up with something really, really easy. At Dr. Deb Verholden. Just follow them, everybody, because they're giving us the information that we need. Let's talk about affirmative action. Everybody. It is on the docket. So many of these so-called culture cases that shape the culture and how we live, business and everything, abortion, all of these things are going to be seen and heard by the Supreme Court. And it's a 6-3 conservative court. A lot of things could get wiped out. How will that change how we live? And how can we come up with a coalition politics that will help us to understand that what benefits you, benefits me, benefits thee? We're all in this together, whether we know it or not. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Oh, Dr. Knighton, unfortunately, I'm going to have to let you go. So I'm going to keep Dr. Deb, and we've got like 4 people who we're going to bring on, which severely limits who.
No,
I hate that you're going to do that so she
absolutely.
can be the caller.
That's okay. Y'all absolutely have an awesome show, and I'll talk to y'all soon.
Oh, absolutely. You know we love you.
Love you too. Talk to you
Okay.
soon.
Thank you. Dr. Deb?
Yeah, she's better than me, because sometimes you'll be like, well, I got to let y'all go. And I'll be like, okay. And I'm like, well, they'll just cut me off when it's time for me to go for real.
I have no control over that. You know, I'm sitting at home.
I'll just hang out here and listen.
Well, no, I'm going to ask you a
They'll
question.
drop me when they need me.
No, I'm going to ask you about it because that's why I wanted you on yesterday. And so I'm just grateful that I have you on today. Because
I think that Cuba situation is so important. It's so exactly. And you know, I've been talking about it, global stewardship.
Yes.
And we just don't have it.
Well, can we talk about that a little bit tomorrow? Can you dig into what they're doing in Cuba tomorrow, please?
Yep, sure.
'Cause that's such a big deal because, you know, Cuba, you have to understand, they are beloved around the world because they don't export war like we do. They export doctors. They export builders. And they export freedom fighters. Yeah, they do that. I'm just keeping it 100 with you. And my mother often muses aloud, Dr. Verholden. She said, you know, what if America decided that we were going to be the center of the world for health? That we would, if we just said that. She said, do you know that no one would even think about dropping a bomb on us? Wouldn't even think about it. Because that's the place where you go in the world to get well. That's where you go.
Yep.
And we have the capacity. You know, I mean, that's the thing that gets to me. I'm like, whoa. She said, no, if we just decided to do good, first do no harm. How about that? If we decided to be the blessed peacemakers, no one would. Have you heard of them trying to drop a bomb on Switzerland? And Switzerland is not perfect. No place is. But they're known as a place where, you know, we don't do war here. We don't do that. And if you all want to have a peace conference, you have it here. It would put us in a completely different position. Matt, I'm sorry.
Yep, I was just going to say I have Attorney Hoffler, Attorney Conley, Attorney Jones, and Reverend Yiri. I'm still trying to get a hold of Attorney O'Neill, but I'm going straight to voicemail.
Well, she's like out west, so no worries. But no, I mean, I'm just saying, you know, when you get her, let me know.
Copy that.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Matt, for a great show. And let me hear everybody. Attorney Hoffler.
Good morning.
Hey. Attorney Connolly.
Good morning.
How's my baby John doing today?
He is great. Just as everyone this morning, trying to stay warm.
Ooh,
How are you?
It's a lot. Attorney Jones.
Good morning.
Good morning. And
Good morning. And
it's wonderful hearing your voice this morning. Attorney Yiri.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right, everybody. Let's talk about affirmative action. And we've got Dr. Deborah Verholden, your home girl, Attorney Yiri. Of course, she is the Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University's School of Medicine. So she knows something about these admissions policies. And oh, gosh. Whew. You know, I tell you what, these people are making us fight. So that's a good thing. Because we have taken for granted all that our parents won for us. I really do. Whenever I hear people say, you know, nothing has changed and we still have to fight. No. A whole lot changed. And you have to fight anew. Our forebears got us here. You know, it is inexcusable to have us swinging from trees now and to have our loved ones lynched on our front porches. It's illegal. And in the main, it's not done anymore. We've made a lot of progress. But you must fight too. I told you, I go back to this song, must Jesus bear the cross alone and all the world go free? No. There's a cross for everyone, one for you and one for me. You got to fight too. And this pushback really helps us to see just how far we've come. These people have organized on us, and they are working hard to take our rights back, and you must work hard to keep them and increase them. How about that? So, everybody, let's get to it. All right, so we're going to have a great conversation. Attorney CK, legal Q&A with CK. You can set the table for us, and then we're going to, pass this around to everyone. I will let you know when Attorney O'Neill gets with us, okay?
Okay.
Okay, I can hear someone shifting papers around in the back. Just remember, we can hear everything in the background, everything. Okay, so
And
we're
I'm
about
gonna,
to come up.
once once I set the table,
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to shift it to Daryl Jones
Mm-hmm.
to just
1 minute.
give a perspective.
Absolutely.
Since he's there on point. And what we're going to do is connect the dots, affirmative action, voting rights, civil rights, all of that.
Okay,
Connect
absolutely.
the dots so people understand what's really at stake. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then we'll bring in the other panel.
Absolutely. And, of course, what I hope we can get Attorney O'Neill today, because she can, well, she's a civil rights lawyer, and she's a past immediate past president of the
30
National
seconds.
Organization of Women. And of now. And, bringing up the fact that white women are the greatest beneficiaries of affirmative action, but one would not know it. So we got a lot to talk about today.
Ten seconds.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And then, Santita,
I've got 10 seconds. I'm coming up. I'm sorry, I'm coming up.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station at AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's Wednesday, January 26th, 2022. It's a joy to be with you today. I want you to call or text me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. Let's talk about affirmative action. Did you know that the greatest beneficiaries of affirmative action are not black people? It's white women. Some of the greatest foes of affirmative action, ironically enough. And even though we are using, well, not we, but Asian Americans are being used as the people who are driving the anti-affirmative action movement. That's not true. 70% of Asians actually support affirmative action. And they are saying, wait, do not put us in this, because that is not where we're coming from at all. Well, the Supreme Court's going to hear this case, and we want to hear from you. What do you think about affirmative action? Let's set the table so that you can understand what it is. In the meantime, let's get to some of these headlines, and then we'll get right to it, everybody. In Chicago, it is freezing, everybody. 12 degrees above zero will be the high. We are not there yet, but it is shaping up to be a sunny day. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 25 degrees above zero. You all are warmer than we are, everybody. Mostly cloudy. There was another crazy day on Wall Street yesterday, a 1,000-point swing. And so the numbers that I will give you today really belie what is happening in that really highly volatile market. The Dow closed down 66 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed down 315 points, and the S&P 500 closed down 53. In the NBA, a nail biter, but the Timberwolves pulled it out, 109-107 over the Trailblazers. And the Bulls will be playing the Raptors this evening in the NHL. Chicago will be facing off against the Red Wings. President Joe Biden says a Russian invasion of Ukraine is imminent. But the atmosphere among the two countries' populations is wildly different. Images from state TV in Moscow depict NATO forces as the aggressors. NATO, meanwhile, says there's a diplomatic way out of the crisis, but Russia must show it's ready to engage in good faith in political talks. We're going to continue to talk about this case, what's going on in Ukraine. Are you ready to send your husband, your wife, your partner, your loved ones over there, your sons, your daughters? In other news, Pfizer and BioNTech have begun a clinical trial for an Omicron-specific COVID-19 vaccine. The study will evaluate the new vaccine for safety, tolerability, and the level of immune response in up to 1,420 adults ages 18 to 55. Alabama electoral maps have been determined to be discriminatory against black people, according to a federal court. Alabama Republicans illegally discriminated against black voters when they drew the state's 7 new congressional districts last year, and they must quickly withdraw the plan, according to a federal court, everybody. And this is a report from The Guardian. The ruling is hugely consequential, they continue, a blunt assessment of the way the lawmakers are using their power to draw district lines to dilute the influence of black and other minority voters. DJ Ferguson, 31, had been previously prioritized for a transplant by Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, but he has refused the COVID-19 vaccine. So guess what? This 31-year-old married father of 2 who's expecting his 3rd child has been removed from the heart transplant list. What do you think about that? I want to hear your thoughts at 773-763-9278 as we open up the discussion on affirmative action. I want to talk to you about saving your home, everybody. I want you to call Team Hochberg at 855-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or 56david.com, 56david.com. If you do not have good credit, if you have poor credit, if you do not have any credit, if you've had some kind of financial issue, they can help you to save your home or to begin the process of purchasing a home. If you're purchasing a new home, refinancing your existing home, securing a VA loan, or even a reverse mortgage, you need to call Team Hochberg, your trusted local lender. Mark Single had a credit score of 670, which is kind of low, everybody. He contacted someone else to refinance his condo. It was a bad move. They did not help him. They could not help him because his condo had not been FHA approved. So he called Team Hochberg, and guess what? He should have done that in the first place because they got his condo FHA approved. They helped him to secure an FHA loan to pay off his credit card debt, which reduced his payments over $500 a month. Let's go back. FHA had not approved his loan for his condo. Okay, so he called Team Hochberg. Not only were they able to work that out, they were able to get him another FHA loan so that he could bring down his credit card debt and reduce his payments by over $500 a month. So please, if you're in that position or in any other, if you just want to start buying a home, don't think that a low credit score is going to knock you out of contention, because if you call Team Hochberg, they can help you. They will work with you on building your credit, on helping you to save your home or get a home. Everybody, call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or visit 56david.com, 56david.com. Let's talk about affirmative action. Many people feel that affirmative action means that you get unqualified people into college. That's not true. That it's only for black people. That's not true. That white women are not the greatest beneficiaries. That too is not true. C.K. Hoffler, what is affirmative action and why should we be concerned about it?
Good morning, Santita. Well, we should really be concerned about affirmative action today. What is affirmative action? Affirmative action, as defined today, allows college admissions, university admissions, workplaces, governmental entities to consider race as a factor, and if it's in college, in enrollment, if it's in the workplace, in hiring. That is, when boiled down to its essence, that's what affirmative action means. What it means is when you have two, from a practical standpoint, otherwise qualified candidates, so I have to underscore, qualified candidates, affirmative action does not allow you to just hire unqualified candidates. Qualified candidates who are applying for a position, for instance, or who are applying for admissions, race can be a factor that you can consider in the determination of who to hire. Now, in 1977, we all have heard of the Bakke decision, B-A-K-K-E, and in that decision, the U.S. Supreme Court said that, yes, you can consider race, but it specifically said that quotas are not acceptable. So meaning, what is a quota? A quota is if you say 10% of the students being hired will be African American. Well, that is not acceptable, but you can consider race as a factor. So that's affirmative action. The reason why we should be very concerned today is because the U.S. Supreme Court has two cases before it. One case, this is brought as a case involving Harvard University on behalf of Asian students. Now, I want to underscore the plaintiff in this case is not Asian American, is of no Asian descent. He is simply, he's a conservative, he's anti-affirmative action, and he's bringing the case on behalf of Asian Americans who are, he says, disproportionately impacted, outplaced because of affirmative action programs. The second case is the University of North Carolina case. And that case, that's on behalf of white students who are saying that because of affirmative action, they are being displaced and not being given admission. Both of these cases are pending before the U.S. Supreme Court. As I understand, will be taken up together. We should hear an opinion in 2023, as late as 2023. And it is critically important for us to follow this and to feel very upset if affirmative action is stricken. Why? Because it benefits not just minorities or Black and brown people, but women have been some of the greatest benefactors of affirmative action, and many groups. And there have been studies, colossal studies, that conclude that diverse workplaces, diverse colleges, diversity in general is a much healthier and better place for people to be. It is healthier, it's better, and people are more productive when there's a more diverse environment. So there's a lot to say about affirmative action, but Santita, generally, that is what it stands for.
CK,
so this point,
let me ask you this question, because we have been joined by the former president of the National Organization of Women, Attorney Terry O'Neill. She's joining your panel, whom you are about to introduce. Let me ask you this. I was reading that something interesting has happened. The people who have, this group that has filed these cases, the Students for Fair Admission, which is a white conservative group, they did something, they employed a tactic. That is to say, it's interesting. You've got the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, one of the world's preeminent universities, and Harvard, one of the world's preeminent universities, that they chose a public university and a private university and tracked them so that they would be tried at the same time, so that the Supreme Court would make a sweeping mandate about affirmative action. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that it's a great strategy for them. It's horrible for affirmative action. We have a very conservative U.S. Supreme Court, 6 conservative justices, 3 more progressive justices. Those 6 conservative justices may believe that this is the time, and these are the cases to finally get rid of, severely curtail, modify, dissolve affirmative action. That is why we have to keep our eye on the prize. So from the standpoint of conservatives, very strong strategy, very well executed. From the standpoint of everyone else and those who have so much to lose, and actually conservatives should not even want this either, it is a bad thing, and it is tragic that is before this very conservative U.S. Supreme Court.
Well, who's on your panel today?
Well, we've got several superstars, Santita, as you know, that always join your show and that provide, legal analysis. We've got Daryl Jones, who's the chair of the board of Transformative Justice Coalition. He's a phenomenal civil rights attorney. He's a phenomenal expert on voting rights. You've seen him protesting. You've seen him making a difference with Barbara Arnwine, who is president and CEO and founder of Transformative Justice Coalition. You saw them in front of the courthouse during the murder trials surrounding the murder trials for Ahmaud Arbery, McMichael, and Brian trials, and you've just seen him all over the place. Extraordinary lawyer. And I thought it was important to hear his perspective because this is all connected. Affirmative action, voting rights, civil rights, reproductive rights, the impact on women. And that's why we've assembled this kind of a panel. We also have Todd Yiri, who is one of the executive leadership for Rainbow Push Coalition. He's a pastor, he's a lawyer, he's a leader, he's bad to the bone, and that's Todd Yiri, Reverend Todd Yiri.
Wait, let me stop you before you introduce Aaron Connolly, Kirsten Sinema's friend. Okay.
Well, there's
Hey,
that.
y'all.
There's that. Hey, there's that, Aaron. You know, we just can't escape. You're a phenomenal political strategist. You're a phenomenal lawyer. You speak truth to power. But we've got to recognize that you worked with. We just have to recognize that because we want you also to put it all into perspective. What
Fair
this
enough.
means.
Fair enough.
From that perspective. And I just
sorry.
say
Oh,
that.
I love you, Santita.
I love you too. Okay.
All right. So we had a moment, and I'm not sure if our fourth guest has arrived.
Attorney Terry O'Neill's
If you want
here.
to introduce her.
Yeah.
Oh, she is. Okay, Terry O'Neill. All right. Terry, I want to introduce you. So when we talk about breaking barriers and being a trailblazer, being dynamic and making a difference, we think of Terry O'Neill. Why? Because she's a past president, immediate past president of NOW, National Association for National Organization of Women. And to see and to experience her vision, her perspective, her implementation has been masterful and wonderful. So we have just an incredible panel, and I thought we'd start off with Daryl Jones to get his perspective. He's a trial lawyer as well, because I want people to understand what this means for trial lawyers, what this means for the country as well. So, Daryl?
Thanks so much, CK, and thank you, Santita, for hosting us and having this discussion. Because as CK has laid out, this is a monumental case that's before the Supreme Court, and its impact is going to be incredible. Because what we see happening here, right, is that we've had 40 years of legal precedent with regards to race being used as a factor to determine admissions in colleges and universities across this country. That's now going to be challenged. We know that the Biden administration had recommended that the justices not take cases because of the established precedent that's already in place. But a majority of the Supreme Court, the six of the members of the Supreme Court, wanted to take up this issue, and we know what they've done with the issue in the previously. So, we're sitting now with a supermajority that is demonstrating to us the importance of the power of the vote. Why do I say that? Because to get to that Supreme Court, they had to be appointed by the President of the United States and confirmed by the Senate. In order for that to happen, it was the vote that put the President, it's the vote that does the Senate, it's the vote that has gotten us to the point where we have these supermajority conservatives that are on this court that have put us in a position where now we're going to have to deal with what they're getting ready to do with regards to affirmative action. I understand this as well, Santita, and I think CK laid it out so well, so brilliantly. When we're talking about Harvard, right, the private institution that they focused in on this, it's not an issue of questioning whether or not there is a sufficient number of Asian students that are there, or are the numbers so low. We know that in the class of 2025 that's getting ready to graduate from Harvard, that they're going to have just under 26% of Asian students that are graduating. So it's not an issue with regards to the representation. It is an issue with regards to the race. It is an issue with regards to black and brown students, because what they're trying to do is to take away the ability of the university to use the race as a factor. It's not the only consideration. And as CK said, and I want to underscore, this is not saying that any student is inferior based on their academic achievement. What this does say is that we want a diverse campus environment that will add to the learning experience at Harvard and at University of North Carolina. This is what's at issue at the Supreme Court, and this is the impact of the decision that they're about to make.
CK. Well, you know what? What about you, Terry O'Neill? Because, CK, one of the hallmarks of her presidency, back-to-back presidencies of the national organization, the national president of the National Organization of Women, is intersectionality. You said we have to do coalition politics. You've always said that, Attorney O'Neill, brilliant civil rights lawyer. CK, because she said, the hip bone's connected to the leg bone. You say everything is interrelated. Everything is intersectional. What about affirmative action? And what about white women being such fierce opponents of it? as they've benefited so fulsomely from it.
Yeah, Santita, and first of all, I'm so honored to be on this panel with these amazing people, CK and Daryl and everybody else on the panel. I'm just thrilled to be here. And let me say, yes, white women have benefited very disproportionately from affirmative action that is attached to both 14th Amendment guarantees of equal protection, but also Title VII, the non-discrimination in the workplace law. So if you look at historically what happened since the passage of Title VII in 1964 until today, it's white women who really have benefited very disproportionately in terms of building a career, being able to get ahead, and that sort of thing. So we know, and I will tell you this, I'm a baby boomer. I am a beneficiary of affirmative action. You know, I graduated from law school. I got a clerkship on the Seventh Circuit because they were looking for women. I know for a fact when I left the Seventh Circuit and went into practice, went back to New Orleans to practice law, most of the law firms at the time, this was the early 80s, were looking to improve their numbers of women in the law firms. And so, you know, in my experience, basically I had two choices. I could be denied the job at the law firm because I was a woman. That was exactly what was routinely done, you know, right up through the late 1970s, or I could be offered the job because I was a woman, you know, and I preferred the affirmative action of being offered the job because I was a woman. But so to be very, very clear, it takes affirmative behaviors to change any kind of structural discrimination. We have only recently, since the summer of 2020, become seriously aware of how structural racism operates in this country. When I say we, I mean really the whole United States and people across the country. And it is affirmative action is absolutely essential to end structural racism. You can't dismantle structural racism without affirmative action. Mere non-discrimination is simply not going to do it. And I think you can see that very clearly in the fact that it is white women who benefited from Title VII so much more than black women or black men or other men and women of color. That's the structural racism that we need to address. And the way you get that done is through affirmative action. Now, unfortunately, John Roberts is determined to lead a Jim Crow 2.0 revolution in this country. He has already spearheaded the demolition of voting rights, and Daryl Jones is absolutely right. There's no daylight between eliminating voting rights for communities of color and eliminating access to education for communities of color. That is all, I think, motivated by the same intent to reimpose Jim Crow on us. And frankly, the American people, I think at the end of the day, we're not going to stand for it.
Attorney C.K. Hoffler, we have got a tremendous panel on legal Q&A with C.K. as we talk about affirmative action. I've got less than a minute before we go to break, C.K. Why were you so eager to tackle this topic today? I mean, we kind of looked at it yesterday just a little bit, but you said, no, we really need to take a hard look at this. Why?
Well, you know, Santita, I think, quite frankly, this is going to affect every aspect of our lives in the United States and abroad. I say abroad because we have people serving in U.S. embassies, serving everywhere abroad, and we have American colleges abroad. It's going to affect every aspect of American life. If affirmative action is stricken by the U.S. Supreme Court through these cases, life as we know it in an employment context, in a college and university context, and private school context, private high school, elementary schools, all of that will change dramatically. The protections that are absolutely necessary to ensure that we have less discrimination, more diversity, more inclusion will once again be stricken. One more thing to be taken away, and it's going to wreak havoc. We will take this country back to the 40s, and none of us want that to happen because we know what was happening in the 40s prior to Civil Rights Act, prior to the Voting Rights Act.
Well, let's just say
that with,
some of us
let's just say,
don't want to go back.
Right. But I can tell you, I don't want to go back.
I
I
don't
want
either.
my children to go back. What will this mean for my children? What will it mean for their children? So that's why I want to tackle this issue, because
Absolutely.
there has got to be a concerted effort to resist this.
Absolutely. You need to know.
And that's why I wanted to bring it today.
Well, you're right. We need to know what we're looking at. We need to know what we're looking at. I'm hoping that Dr. Deborah Verholden is still there, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University School of Medicine, because it's been a fight to get us in. You see how important it is to have Black doctors and brown doctors and people who are poor, people from diverse backgrounds. You see how important it is when you go to the doctor. It determines whether you're going to be listened to or not. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show, talking about affirmative action. 773-763-9278. Back in just a minute. Dr. Deb, are you still there?
Oh, no, I'm still here listening to this good conversation.
Can you join in?
I'm here. Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right, CK, I'm pitching it to you, honey bun.
Okay. This is a great discussion, Santita. It really is. And I feel like we have to keep on plugging away at this, because I don't think people realize the full impact.
Well, there's so much information we don't have, right? I mean, we don't have a lot of information. So you still have to speak to Aaron Connolly, Dr. Deb, and Reverend Dr. Yiri.
Absolutely.
But I mean, these people, they're so
coming up.
Very shortly, we're going to have, excuse me, do we have enough space to bring up Chapearl, Matt? I think we're bringing her up too. Very quickly.
I'm trying to get a hold of her right now.
Okay. And look, keep Reverend Yuri on mute, because he's just going to beg for some food along with Daryl Jones. You're all so embarrassing to me. Begging for biscuits on the radio. What?
We're making our pitch.
I was like,
Chapearl made me a peach cobbler a couple weeks ago, and it saved my life and served our country at the same time. So I'm grateful for that.
Thank you, Aaron Connolly, for not leaving us out here, making it just this kind of. I'm so glad that you've helped out. Now I don't feel so bad about, as Santita says, begging for food. Thank you.
I said begging for biscuits. Biscuits. That's what Daryl did. I said, Daryl Jones is begging for biscuits.
I beg for chicken, smothered chicken. Well, let me go back on. Go ahead, carry on.
Okay. No, and Daryl, you don't even eat biscuits. You don't eat carbs. You look like you don't eat carbs. Be quiet.
Sweet potato biscuits are the exception.
High fiber.
Oh, it's the fiber. Oh, okay. Lord have mercy. She sure can cook, though. Oh, my gosh. She never should have cooked for Reverend Jackson and Reverend Yiri, two pastors. Oh, my gosh. She really showed out. And she just spread out the food, and he has not gotten over it. I said, ain't this pitiful? So sad. So sad.
And Reverend
I'm getting voicemail for Mrs. Wells. I'll let you know when I get her up there.
What we should be doing on a grassroots level, what we should be doing in the faith community, how should we address this? I think it's important to really lay out a plan on that level.
Okay. So, CK, you want to go to...
And then...
I just want to make sure you have your lineup. We still have Aaron, we have Dr. Deb.
And then
and we have...
I'd like Aaron, from Todd, then I'd like to go to Aaron. And Aaron, I would like you to comment on, from a policy standpoint, what this means, like ramifications on the Hill. What does this mean, and how will it impact legislatively and all that? Because every state has its own affirmative action program. I mean, this could really reverberate. And then Dr. Deb being there, being an academic institution, albeit a medical institution, the impact that you see, that you would feel if affirmative action is stricken.
Absolutely.
30 seconds.
And how it doesn't match with all of these DEI initiatives that people are launching. They don't align. most leading academic institutions and health centers have less than 10 tenured faculty in those institutions. And tenure is important because it gives you the security to swing hard, swing wide. But if you don't have people and you don't have diversity in your faculty, we are lacking then in innovation.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey, everybody, live legal Q&A with CK on the Santita Jackson Show. Attorney CK Hoffler. I'm Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be with you today as we get this information about affirmative action, which the Supreme Court is about to hear two cases coming out of Harvard, excuse me, and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, two of our most prominent universities, one public, one private. And will race as a factor still be a factor in admission? So you see they're beginning to remove the SATs, and there's a lot going on, CK, but you've got a tremendous panel, so let me not stand in their way.
Well, Santita?
I'm here.
Bring up Reverend Todd Yiri. I'd like to bring up Reverend Todd Yiri to comment. There's a component of this that flies in the face of social justice, civil rights, and I know our state community, our civil rights community, our grassroots communities are outraged for sure about this. And I thought that Todd Yiri could comment on what we should do. What should the faith community do? How should we mobilize in our communities to address, to counter, to resist what is happening as it relates to affirmative action?
CK, that's an important question. It starts with being historically aware of how legal precedent has gotten us here. If you go back and look at the role of faith leaders during much of the test case process that helped move the dial, many times they were either funding cases or serving as plaintiffs for cases, right? And the thing that's important to note about this distinction on this current civil rights attack, it is under Title VI, not Title VII. Title VII requires that you show actual harm to prove discrimination and intent. Title VI only requires that you show disparate impact. That means that you have these cases, these constant cases showing that somehow or other there's a disparity in place. Whether or not I've been actually harmed is not the question. And so you have, in this instance, an Edward Blum who helped to fund actually the assault on voting rights that led to the Shelby decision, also helping to find plaintiffs to promote new test cases to help erode voting rights, civil rights, affirmative action in this case. And so what the faith community has to do is has to make itself available. Many times we hear conversations about what's affecting folks in our community and our congregation. In Maryland, we've had cases when we were suing about public transportation. One of the lead plaintiffs in that case is a member of my staff that I identified for the Legal Defense Fund to help bring that suit against the governor of Maryland. What we've got to recognize is the courts provide a tool. We may not always agree with the judge's interpretation of the law, but we cannot sit and assume that we should not bring continuing cases to test the veracity of the interpretation of the law. We cannot just rely on precedent to be that cover. And so we should understand the history of how we've gotten here, the work of Thurgood Marshall, Charles Hamilton Houston, Legal Defense Fund, when we kept bringing these cases that led to actually the integration of higher ed to give us access. We must now continue to show that even though we have affirmative action, the affirmative action has been inadequate, still leading to disparate impact. And where there are federal funds involved, that actually puts us in a position. We have underused Title VI as a tool. We have to bring our own counterclaims in this process to make the courts have to decide how are they going to weigh the issues of race, not by which a racial minority brings it, but how are we going to use it based on the historical harm and the remedy that the government must bring about. And so the faith community, know the history, but make yourself ready to be litigants in this process is, I think, a good way for us to move forward.
CK?
Well, I think, Reverend Yiri has said it well. But, I think we have to really, really push with everything that we have from a policy standpoint. So, Aaron Connolly, the political strategist, we've talked about your relationship that you've had, your working relationship with Sinema, the congressman, what can we say, with Senator Sinema, and we just have to throw that out there. But most importantly, your insight, your knowledge of policies, procedures, this country, and affirmative action. What do you say about this?
Well, thank you, CK, for having me on the panel as the voice of the political and policy side of this argument. And I will say most of the folks I work with are real progressives and solid Democrats. So while I did have some experience with Kirsten Sinema, I know your audience knows better. So I just need to correct the record there real quick.
Well, but I will say this. It indicates how her politics have moved all over the place because, people like Terry O'Neill and the organizations with which she's been involved gave her a lot of money and gave her the prominence, gave her the platform to do what she's doing. She's not supposed to be doing what she's doing now. She was not sent to do this. So I kind of needle you a bit, but it lets you know just how far she has moved. The fact that you worked with her. So
and for this issue, Santita and CK, I think what we'll see policy-wise is a little bit of mayhem if the Supreme Court does rule that affirmative action in university settings such as this is now illegal and unconstitutional. We would see states have a domino effect, and in many of the conservative states that are following certain rules based on this federal policy, we would start to see those roll back. So what would that impact have? There would be certain states where students would focus their applications and certain states where they would not. We would see an explosion and confusion in how students operate in this application process, right? This is a very stressful experience for students and families, especially students. And while it's not always the case, usually folks that are coming into college that are either first-generation college students where their families may have lived in the United States a long time, but they're the first one that has actually been able to apply and potentially attend college. That process is extremely overwhelming. More often than not, those numbers increase for those first-generation students when those students are also students of color, right? So there's a double impact that we'll see on those types of students, and that is stressful as a baseline. Now you add this in where a system that has existed for over 40 years in this country to right the wrongs of our history, where these elite institutions, whether they're state schools or private schools, they are still elite institutions for many people that are growing up in this country and looking to think about attend college, right? Most students have a dream of attending community college, and that's where they'll end up. So we'll see a big strain probably on those community college systems for these students who say, I still want to try and get into Harvard, but I'm going to try and go as a transfer student. I'm going to do a year or 2 years at a good community college for less money and try and transfer into maybe a second or third tier school and save some money. So this will impact our entire university, college, vocational school system and how students and families are going to game it out, right? They invest thousands of dollars sometimes on the front end for SAT prep, for ACT prep, and these students and families that are struggling are the ones that are going to be most impacted. So what we'll see probably are less students of color even applying if this is upheld, right? Which is an awful trend. We right now in our country, we do not have enough representation to match our basically, let's use this as an example, and Dr. Holden can probably weigh in on this. I have many friends who are trying to find physicians, for example, that look like them, that are either African American, Black, that are Latina, especially when we're talking about medical issues that are sensitive, right? Mm-hmm. There's not enough folks employed in those professions right now to satisfy the market. If we're discouraging at an institutional level, especially with these elite institutions, and we see them having other problems, legal problems. CK, I'm sure you anti-legislation come in on some of these, a few of these elite universities that were colluding to fix prices to allocate financial aid. So the system is up against poor students and students who are first-generation college students at a baseline, the only protection that students of color have is this affirmative action. To take that away, it's not leveling the playing field for anyone. None of these plaintiffs. White women and Asian American students do benefit from these systems more than the folks that they were designed to protect and that the systems were designed to correct. If you take this away, we will be in a crisis, and we will allow these institutions to continue the elitist practices that they prefer, right? They want to admit these legacy students. They want to admit folks that are going to make donations to continue this cycle of elitism. And they are already gatekeepers. We're making the gate higher with this legislation. With this potential decision by the Supreme Court. And it's the antithesis of what any of the affirmative action policies were designed to do. It's in the policy pieces that will come out of it with regards to financial aid and how it can disrupt our system. I'm not sure everybody has thought about that.
CK,
I have to tell you.
Yeah.
When I'm listening to Dr. Knight and Dr. Deborah Holden, I feel like a lurch because every time I think I've mastered something relative to COVID, here they come with something else, and I'm like, and we almost do it in unison, like a song, because it's just devastating, right? Yeah. This is equally as devastating for different reasons, and we have to have our eye on the prize here. And I think, Dr. Deborah Holden just wears so many different hats. But think about affirmative action being stricken during COVID, as if there's another thing that we could pile on to the stress that people are feeling. College students who are, some of them homeless, virtually homeless because of COVID. All of this, and now you're going to take away, and I like to think of affirmative action as protections and something that enables people who are qualified to level the playing field. It's a leveling of the playing field, readjusting, retooling, which is what this country needs. So now we're taking that away. It's sort of like how we had the pre-clearances stricken from the Voting Rights Act. The reason why states now are able to just randomly in a volatile, capricious way impose these heinous and oppressive voting rights measures. So Dr. Deborah Holden, from a medical standpoint, do you see any synergy or nexus with how devastating it would be if the U.S. Supreme Court did strike down affirmative action programs during COVID?
Yeah, just imagine not having Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett during the COVID crisis. She was one of the lead scientists at NIH. She comes from very, very humble beginnings. She matriculated, and like me, we've done many sessions together. We joke and call ourselves program kids, because we are the kids that, but for these programs that don't give people a handout, but rather a hand up, like an opportunity to level the playing field, I wouldn't have had access to many of the opportunities and resources that I did, not because of a lack of brilliance or hard work or will or grit on my part, but the fact that many of these institutions and these institutions of higher learning, they had baked in to their admissions, baked into their institutions, not allowing women or minorities to even matriculate at these institutions. I mean, you got to think about it. These institutions were founded, and literally all of their, first couple decades of cohorts were all white men. They literally did not allow women or minorities to even matriculate at those institutions. So we had a real strong level of activism to bar access. We now need some very similar proactive affirmative steps to ensure that the doors of these institutions are open for everybody, because it is the future Deborah Holden and Kizzmekia Corbett and others like that who will be contributing to this medical and public health landscape. If colleges won't even review our applications, if they won't acknowledge the historical wrongs that have had it be that we haven't had access and now do what they can to try to level the playing field, what we're doing is we're just suppressing our opportunities and the brilliance that it will come from all of our scholars, whether it be based on race or gender or ethnicity, or whether or not you are a child of an immigrant. The notion that affirmative action is somehow a handout undermines the reality that brilliance is evenly distributed. There's brilliance across all racial ethnic groups, across all genders, across all gender identities. But the doors and the entry points into the places where that brilliance gets cultivated and ratified is there, and it's not even. So we need affirmative, proactive policies with enforcement in order to ensure that there's fair opportunity and fair access for all people.
You know, and I think we've got to really, CK, open things up. I mean, Dr. King, when he was a child, an acknowledged genius, but when he took a standardized test, he scored poorly in his verbal skills, which is crazy. When Reverend went to the University of Chicago and University of Illinois, when he was at the University of Chicago getting his master's in divinity, I think he got a D in preaching. Right? I know. But it's because he would he would do his research, write up a paper, and then he would outline it, because he doesn't like to read when he preaches. He has processed information and he can just flow with it, right? And so there's just a lot that we're missing. There is so much, as Donny Hathaway called this, the black pool of genius, the brown pool of genius, the woman's pool of genius. There's so much genius out here. And we keep acting as if genius is only comes from one side of town or from one group. That's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, and the fact that we would take race out of this, I mean, it's a very dangerous, it's a very dangerous proposition that's been put out here. Very dangerous.
Absolutely. And I think, this is a wake-up call, Santita. We all need, I don't think that I needed another wake-up call. I mean, every day there's a new wake-up call. But this is yet another wake-up call. And for this to happen in the Biden administration is also just tragedy on top of tragedy. Because if ever there were a time for an administration to stop this type of thing, it would be when the Democrats are in control. You would really think, or to put, motorcades, block, and the Biden, President Biden did try to dissuade the U.S. Supreme Court from hearing these types of cases. But the U.S. Supreme Court is the U.S. Supreme Court, and the one thing that we have, and this I call the tripartite system of government, where we have the ultimate judiciary, the U.S. Supreme Court, and all the cases that will be heard by them. The U.S. Supreme Court is not thinking about and not listening to the Biden administration. Why would they? Well, 3 of the more conservative members on the court were appointed by former President Trump. So politically, I think there's no reason for this court to do anything other than to strike affirmative action. And sadly, Justice Clarence Thomas he will do more positioning in life than ever to pen this opinion, because this has been what he believes and has acted on, even though he is the greatest benefactor of affirmative action. Oh my goodness, he is the greatest benefactor of affirmative action. Justice Clarence Thomas, that he probably will be the person to pen the opinion if it happens, and I pray that it doesn't, to strike down affirmative action. So the question is, what can people do? What can people do? What are we allowed? What can we do? And I think, Santita, in closing this discussion, maybe if we can have each of our panelists to summarize what they think we can do.
Let's start with Daryl Jones. Attorney Daryl Jones, what can we do?
Thank you, Santita and CK, for this discussion. When and as this case progresses and it's to be argued before the Supreme Court, you can rest assured that Barbara Arnwine and I, along with many others, will be out front of that Supreme Court, being certain that the voices have heard, that we be certain, that the affirmative action plan not go into place, that it not be struck down. One of the things that Aaron Connolly said a little earlier is that one of the things that will happen as a result, potentially, if affirmative action is struck down, is that right now, CK, we have 1% of the nation's lawyers are African American. That's going to change. It'll
1%?
be even lower. It'll be more difficult to find attorneys.
I'm sorry, 1%?
Say one more time, CK?
That's it?
1%? No, it's astounding. It's just 1%. It's astounding.
But, right, astounding. And that also goes for doctors. You know, you have that same issue. So when you're looking for someone that looks like you, that holds your interest, because we know, you know, if you read that 1619 project, Dr. Fair Holden will tell you that there was Dr. Susan Moore that got her degree in medicine from the University of Michigan in 2002. Well, she just passed away last year from COVID. What did she want? She was asking for more medicine. They thought she was a drug addict. Mm-hmm. She was giving them the medical advice. She was a doctor, telling them what she needed. And the white doctors refused to believe her. That's the reason why this affirmative action is so important, so that people that have the interest of those that look like us have the ability to have that education, to be in the room, to make the decisions, to be certain that we're taken care of, not simply on the legal side, on the medical side, but on every professional side. We've got to be certain that we continue to have the diversity that's available for the institutions, so that our kids can get those professional degrees and come back and help the community and be certain that we're all protected. That's where I come from.
You know what? We have about 30 seconds for everybody else. Just very quickly, Reverend Dr. Yiri, marching orders.
Well, stay alert, stay aware, and let's talk about ways to add to the litigation, right? We're in a litigation legislation mode. We got to vote in every election, but we also have to use the courts to counter this erosion of civil rights in the 21st century. It is a real problem, and we have to stay engaged.
Attorney Terry O'Neill?
And we have to work to level to build those coalitions and keep those coalitions going. You know, the attacks on voting, the attacks on women's reproductive access, the attacks on affirmative action. This is all of a piece, and we all need to be working together and in collaboration to fight Jim Crow 2.0.
Jim Crow 2.0. Aaron Connolly.
I agree with Dr. Yiri. Let's look at what Title VI options we have for additional litigation. Not all of the institutions in this country are following the law as it stands currently. And also, let's make sure we're telling our stories. That's always such an important part of it. And thank you, Dr. Deborah Furholden, for giving us those examples. We need more of these examples of, I wouldn't be here if not for affirmative action, right? As a woman, as a lawyer, I wouldn't have been able to be where I am. But let's encourage our friends and colleagues to share that this is something that worked, and that if it goes away, it's going to be a problem. We need to share our own stories.
Dr. Deborah Furholden.
Yeah, I encourage people to think about, if you want options when you're choosing your first physician, think about when you have your first baby and you're thinking about who you want as a pediatrician. These things happen at the earliest stages. Your grandchildren's future pediatrician is in high school right now. That person should have fair access to a high-quality college education, because to matriculate all the way through the medical school, you got to start off somewhere. And we need to deal with this at all stages and the earliest stages of the process. You want to take your granddaughter to a pediatrician or for her first OBGYN appointment and not have any choices in your community? When you hear these numbers, 1% lawyers, 1% percent of doctors, and for Black men, it's even way worse, right? So you want those options. We know that those things make a difference. So now people have to stand for them now. This is an investment in our future. So I encourage people, make sure you understand where your elected officials or soon to be or would be elected officials stand on this issue and hold their feet to the fire. They're supposed to be representing our points of view, not their own personal agenda or their own personal morals or values or lack thereof.
These last 30 seconds belong to you, CK. Legal Q&A with CK every Wednesday. What are your closing thoughts?
Well, Santita, my closing thoughts are, lawyers out there with your degree, Black lawyers, brown lawyers, progressive lawyers, unite, fight. And fight in the spirit of Thurgood Marshall. Doctors, unite because it's a medical issue. Fight in the spirit of Dr. Truth. For the faith community, civil rights community, fight in the spirit of Dr. King, Reverend Jackson, and all of those, Andy Young, that have fought before us to get to this point and who still have a voice. So we have to unite and fight.
Fight, 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 everybody. I'm hoping you got some good takeaways from this. Share this show, everybody. Share this on YouTube. Share it on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. That's where you have to join me, not on Santita Jackson, but the Santita Jackson and Friends page. And meet me on Twitter at Santita J, and on Instagram the Santita Jackson IG. Everybody fight, 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 fight. Matt, thank you for a great show. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. God bless you, everybody. Have a great day. Stay warm.
Let's change the world. We can change the world.
Thank you all. You all want to say anything to the Facebook Live audience before we go?
Well, Santita, I have to run, but this is what I'd like to say. This conversation has been so rich and so energizing. And I think people just need to know there's something they could do. I don't think people realize that affirmative action was actually up for discussion, because I think many people don't understand the role of the U.S. Supreme Court. They just think it's a court like any court, some kind of court. No, this is a court that will change life as we know it, will change the law of the land.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people need to understand that and just know that we many of us stand in solidarity on this issue. No one's alone feeling some kind of way about this. Many of us. And donate and give to these organizations that are fighting this fight every day, outside, in the cold, in the heat, and doesn't matter the weather, in the country, in the urban areas, in the streets. There are organizations like Rainbow Push, Transformative Justice, Action Network, Urban League, NAACP, and on and on and on. And you have local organizations that are there every day. Support them. If you don't have the money to support, call your congressperson. How about that? Call your senator. Say that you do not want to see affirmative action removed. It's a bad thing. You can get right basic. It's bad. I don't want to see it happen. What are you going to do about it? Ask your senator and congressman, because you have a voice. And if you call the Senate line, call your congressional. You can get that information on Google. It's so easy to make a difference on some level. And finally, just have some discussion. Talk about it to your children. This is devastating for me, for my children.
Oh,
so talk about it. If you don't have children, a niece, a nephew, a godchild, anybody's child is going to be impacted by this.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And I mean, and Daryl brought up that doctor who had, thank God, and God, as she has gotten her crown, she is with the angels. She sat in that hospital bed. First of all, they would not believe that she was a physician. They refused to believe it. That was the first problem, even though she was speaking to them in their common language. I mean, and she deteriorated to such a degree, there was nothing they could do to help her.
And you know, Santita,
CK?
A black woman was a physician. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I'm saying I had a case like that, but they didn't believe a black woman was a physician trying to help somebody who was in crisis on a plane. And the airline stewardesses were busy questioning her, cross-examining her about whether she was really a doctor, whether she really had credentials, despite the fact that she showed them her credentials. Yeah, we have a lot of work to do.
Oh, let me give you a quick little story. You know Congresswoman Terry. I can't believe I'm forgetting Terry's name, and Terry's like one of my dearest friends. She's out of Alabama, and she went to Princeton undergrad. She went to Harvard Law School, and she was at Cambridge. She did some graduate work at Cambridge. Okay, great. So she had to go home to Alabama for the weekend. Not a problem. So she goes home for the weekend, and Terry is very, very warm, very friendly. She's an effervescent person. And so what she did was she's talking to one of her seatmates on the plane, and they're just, talking, and she's having a great time. And they're like, okay, well, so what do you do? She said, well, I'm a law firm, one of the most prestigious law firms in the world. She was based in New York. And oh, well, where'd you go to law school? I went to Harvard Law School. And so where'd you go to undergrad? Princeton. And I went to Oxford. She went through all of this. And let me tell you, do you know that one of her law school, I mean, she wasn't a partner at the law firm, but one of her fellow lawyers from the law firm was riding back from Alabama. He too was from Alabama. He was riding back from Alabama. And he happened to sit with this woman, and he said, she wanted to know what he was doing in New York. He said, I work at this law firm. He said, oh, this woman said, oh, you will never guess. I had the craziest woman who I wrote down here with. And she thought, Terry Sewell. She said, do you know, she said that she went to Harvard. Do you know she said she went to Princeton? Do you know she said all these things? It's just absolutely crazy. And this man said, uh, but it's true. It's true. I mean, these are the things that happen to us on a regular, on a regular, on a regular. And they can even happen to us with our friends. But you need to understand the importance of affirmative action. You need to understand that we all benefit from it. We all do. We all do. We all benefit. And so it's not just it's everybody's fight, which is why we had this panel with us today. So because they know that it's everybody's fight, and you know what, everybody needs to go on and get involved. CK and Daryl and well, everybody on the panel. I'm going to send you this this story that came out of Alabama that showed that the electoral maps are going to have to be redrawn because the federal court ruled that black voters had been discriminated against. So I will send it to you very shortly. So everybody, I love you. Is anybody still there? Does anyone have anything else they'd like to say? Is that it? Okay. All right, all right. So I love everybody to be with you. The White House is 202-456-1414, 202-456-1414, and Congress is 202, thank you, John, 224 3121, 224-3121. All righty, one love. That's right, one love. I love you, love you, love you, love you. And just hang on in, everybody. S. Jackson at WCPT820.com, Blu-ray. S. Jackson at WCPT820.com. That's it. Okay. But now let me know. Put Blu-ray in the subject line so I'll know who it's coming from. Okay. All right. I love you all. Matt, thank you for a great, great show. I was about to, as mighty, mighty show. Thank you for that. Thank you all. Love you all so much. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow, God willing, on the Santita Jackson Show. Stay warm. You see, I'm wearing lots of clothes today. I love you, everybody. Wait to be with you tomorrow. Bye-bye.